Hello, Rob from Fountain Pen Journey with my review of the Jinhao 9056 or 9056, whatever you want to call it. The Jinhao 9056, new fountain pen from Jinhao, from China. So back to Chinese fountain pens, cheap Chinese fountain pens. And I think the main thing is, do we want to know, is this fountain pen any good? Well, here's the review. The Jinhao 9056 is available in 4 different wooden colours. There's like a dark brown and a very, very dark wood coloured version of this pen, but I only really was interested in these two. So this one here is the Rosewood, and this is the wood that sellers on eBay, AliExpress are calling Tiger. Now I will state that the price of this pen does vary quite a bit from seller to seller, and I actually found it was cheaper to purchase these two pens, including postage, from China on AliExpress rather than eBay, which is my usual go-to for cheap Chinese fountain pens. Just worked out cheaper, that's all. Delivery was fast. I'm talking maybe a couple of weeks, something like that. And I've been using the pens for a week or two just to see how they are. And one of my main points of this is the fact that rather than just sort of get the pens, ink them up, use them for maybe even a day or less and see how they actually are, I wanted to give these pens a bit of a chance to sit there unused for a certain period of time, i.e. more than a week, just to see if there were any really bad hard starts, because Jinhao fountain pens do suffer a little bit like that. Don't use them for maybe 5 days, you get a hard start. You might even have to prime the feed, things like that. And with these being wooden pens, I wanted to check that the seals, the cap seals, were actually effective, because I've used wooden pens before with poor cap seals, or no cap seals in some cases, with some pens from China, and the nibs dry out in about 2 or 3 days easily. So let's have a look at these two pens. We'll start off with the Rosewood, and it is a nice warm red wood colour. I'll just pop the Tiger out of the way for a minute. Do this, and it's a matte finish, but there is a polish on there, and it's a nice wood. You will notice that there is some variability between the cap and the barrel in the colour, and I don't know a lot about wood. I'm not a massive wood fanatic, and I'm certainly not usually a massive fan of wooden fountain pens, but I've sort of started to get into wooden fountain pens a little bit more, and I thought these are brand new from Jinhao, so because it's Jinhao, and I do tend to buy a lot of Jinhao fountain pens, it was worth a go. I wasn't expecting a lot from this pen, to be honest, especially not for the price. I mean, they're not the cheap Chinese plastic fountain pens that you usually get from Jinhao, but they were a little bit more expensive. So overall, the shape, design, and even the weight is pretty substantial. I'm not going to say it's a heavy pen. It's a mid-weight fountain pen. It is a decent enough size, which I shall compare with a Lamy All-Star here. So if I pop these next to each other, you'll see that the Jinhao is quite sizable. I mean, it is marginally, maybe 1/2 centimetre longer than the Lamy All-Star. So it's not a small pen. And overall, I actually find that the quality and finish of this pen is really, really good. One thing that's actually really impressed me most is this Sprung Clip. There we go. I mean, it is a spring. There's nothing fancy. There's no mechanism there, but it is sprung, and it's quite stiff as well. I mean, this is a good quality clip. It will hold on to things quite well, like shirts, things like that. And it's, yeah, overall, the style, design, cigar shape, really nice. Very reminiscent of the Jinhao 159 in size, girth, and everything else. So it's quite a chunky pen, and I do quite like that. It's got something going for it. As you can see, it's all made of wood on the outside. Down here we have Jinhao pen heritage. Now, I don't know whether this is supposed to be, this Jinhao 9056 is supposed to be sold as the Jinhao heritage, or whether this is something that Jinhao has put on there, but either way, it's been engraved in there, and I don't know whether that's been stained or what, but you can see Jinhao pen heritage there. The clip, there is no Jinhao branding on there, it's a polished gold clip, and it's a nice looking pen. It's very tactile, it's quite smooth. It is a bit, I would say, on the slippery side, so if you've got, you know, really dry hands, yeah, it could be a bit slippery. So unscrew to uncap this pen. So do the turns. One turn. It's about 1.5 turns. And then here we have got black plastic liner. Now this wood and the black plastic there, where the threads are, it's not the best finish. I've got to admit, it's not perfect, and a lot of that issue actually seems to be the plastic rather than the wood. It's got no sharpness, no rough edges on the wood or the plastic, and we have got here the section with the nib, which is, in my honest opinion, pretty much identical to the Jinhao 159. So if you know that chunky pen with its number 6 nib, which are swappable, these Jinhao nibs, you can swap them out easily, they're just friction fit, black plastic feed. We've got a section there which is, it's not the longest, but it's long enough, it's quite girthy, and there are some threads here, metal threads, and a step up there. Nib is two-tone, and of course it's got the Jinhao branding on there. You unscrew this, and when I'm talking about unscrewing, we have a converter. Comes with the pen, which is, yeah, reasonably good quality. It's not a cheap converter. Well, it's a cheap converter, but it's not a really bad converter. As you can see, the pen is a really good size, so it is really, for me, a wooden version of the Jinhao 159. The pen does amazingly post, and it becomes stupidly long. Surprisingly not too bad though. It is comfortable. It is a big oversized pen. So the posting is quite surprising. Now, when I was talking about the threads, these threads are really good. They're really smooth. I mean, it doesn't glide in. There is a little bit of resistance in there, and bearing in mind it is metal on plastic on the cap threads, so if you get it wrong you could graunch the threads and ruin those, but they're really good. And the pen is very comfortable to hold indeed. Nice pen to write with, nice wood. Just pop that one there for a minute and get the Lamy All-Star back so we can see dimensions with these pens next to each other. So the Lamy All-Star or Safari is maybe almost a centimetre longer. So posted, let's post these pens. Oops. So ooh, hang on, it's not even in the frame of the camera. Right, there we go. As you can see, yeah, the Lamy All-Star is marginally larger when posted as well. So let's cap that one. Look at the tiger wood, tiger colour. This also has a gold coloured clip, similarly sprung, and this tiger is in fact very, very nicely polished wood. I'm suspecting that's quite a coarse wood, coarse grain in the wood, but it is, I'd like to say, colourful, you know what I mean, and it seems to match. Everything about it seems to match, like it's been made from one single piece of wood, which is really, really nice. I think the actual quality of that is incredibly high. I mean, the grain matches, so I'm guessing that this came from the same branch, piece of wood, whatever it is, and that's really, really quite impressive. I'm very impressed with that for the price. The edge of this black plastic insert is, yeah, a bit smoother. On the back of the cap we do have, let's try and focus that, Jinhao Heritage, which isn't stained or dyed, that is just engraved into the wood. Got the same gold and silver coloured nib. These are all medium nibs. These pens seem to come only with medium nibs, which is fine. I'm happy with that. And as you can see, very attractive, very nicely sized pen, and it posts obviously the same as the other one. Quite big. Now, writing sample. This is where things get interesting. I'm going to start off with the Rosewood. Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to start off with the Tiger. I'm going to try and do these two writing samples side by side on the same page, because there are some differences. So I'll start off by just drawing a quick dividing line down there. So we'll write on this side first. Oops. Decently wet. Remember, this is a medium nib, and as you can see, it lays down ink perfectly well. You can just about squeeze a little bit more ink out, but there is absolutely no flex there really. I would not want to push this nib any further. This ink, by the way, is Organics Studio. Organics Studio Uranium Green. So what do I think about the nib? Well, it's, let's say, a typical Jinhao nib. It's medium. I would say it's bordering on fine, but this Organic Studio tends to be a little bit of a drier ink. But I would say that in general this writes a little bit towards fine when you compare it with some of the other medium Jinhao nibs that I've used over my last few years in my fountain pen journey. And it writes well, it keeps up, it doesn't dry out in use, and as you can see, this pen has not been used for a week and it wrote first time straight out of the box. No, not straight out of the box, I hate that term. It wrote first time after being unused for a week. No hard starts. So, wooden pen, as I said at the beginning of the video, and the cap seal is excellent. For a Jinhao pen, not to hard start. I think Jinhao have actually really improved the quality of their fountain pens since I started buying them and using them in 2017. I think the quality of Jinhao pens is remarkably good now. The prices have increased, but you know, I don't mind as long as it's not Moonman prices or, worst of all, Pen BBS prices, which I think have gone up a little bit too high for Chinese fountain pens. So the Tiger version, absolutely great, wrote without any hard starts, write well, and it keeps up. I can write pages with this pen, no problem whatsoever. So let's move on to the Rosewood version. Back to the Rosewood, remind you what it looks like. Nice reddish brown warm wood, really attractive looking pen. I do prefer these two colours, they are quite different, and I think over the Ebony or Walnut or whatever the other two darker woods are, I think these just happen to have that little bit of something extra. Quite attractive pen. So let's see what this one writes like. Now, one thing that I will say is a lot of the times when you're reviewing a pen, as you can see, wrote straight away, no hard starts. When you're reviewing a pen, you generally only ever review one. You tend to get one of these, write with it, do your review, and you know, the next person that buys one has a bad experience or a better experience than you have had. And with two pens, I think that because I got these two at the same time, it was important to do a parallel review like this, because there are differences in the quality. So same pen, same nib, 9056 Rosewood, also a medium nib, and I have been writing with this pen as well for a while, and no issues, except one thing that I will talk to you about. I'll see if you can hear it over the microphone, it's unlikely. You know what, it's actually so tricky to write with this. Decently wet, and the reason it's so tricky to write with, you can actually squeeze a little bit more ink out of this nib, which is interesting. This ink is Diatramentis. Midnight Blue. Quite a free flowing ink, does feather a little bit. And what can I say? Well, it is marginally broader than the Tiger nib. Not a whole lot in it. But one thing I have to say is that this nib, and I have had a look, is not... I'll probably never get that into focus. It's not the smoothest. It is a little bit out of line, so straight out of the box, the Tiger pen writes brilliantly. It's great. I mean, obviously it's not the most amazing writing experience you're ever going to find in a fountain pen, but it writes very, very well. Very impressed. The Rosewood one, I'm not saying that this is down to the wood or anything, but you know, Jinhao nibs, notoriously variable. If you get a good one, it can write brilliantly. You get a bad one and it might not write at all or at all well. This is bordering on the old versions of the Jinhao nibs from back in the day, because it is scratchy. It's not easy to write with. It writes, there's nothing wrong with the writing experience, but any sort of pressure and you can really feel the scratchiness. I mean, it drags on the paper. It needs work. So that nib on the Rosewood pen, not good. Whereas the Tiger, no problem whatsoever with that. Smooth as you can expect. So no issues with that Tiger nib at all. But the Rosewood one, yeah, it's good old Jinhao with their iffy quality control, and I'm not going to blame Jinhao for that, because I've had the same issues with Lamy nibs, same with Kaweco even. You do get this occasional issue, which you're never going to go through the rigmarole of sending a fountain pen like this back to China to a seller, because you'll never see it again and you'll have just lost your money. So you might as well just work on the nib yourself. And it doesn't take a lot. It just needs a loop, check the tine alignments, make sure that's all right, maybe use a bit of micromesh to smooth out the nib. But other than that, this nib is going to be rectified within 5 minutes, if that. So it's an easy fix, but it is something to be aware of. 2 Jinhao 9056 fountain pens, one writes great, one is not great, and definitely needs work. This isn't just me being a bit picky, saying, well, I could live with it, it just doesn't write how I like it. It definitely needs work. So there you have it. There is the review of the Jinhao 9056 wooden fountain pen. And I don't know whether these pens are at some point going to be sold by various sellers on eBay and Etsy and other places as Jinhao heritage fountain pens. Maybe they will, don't know. But they are really lovely fountain pens. And it is just your typical Jinhao nib that is a little bit of a letdown. So once again, you know, you're talking about Chinese fountain pens. Quality control, not really there, but you could pay a lot more for a Lamy or a Kaweco pen and have exactly the same problems. So, you know, nibs, an imprecise science that relies on precision, if you like. So thanks very much for watching, and I shall see you next time. Bye.